What is up, guys? Brainsmasher. Here we go. From the vaults, number 55. Engage metal. Yeah, it's been a while since we did one of these. Put my angle on. Pretty good. I hope this video finds you well and in good spirits. What's going on in the background? What is that squirrely fruitiness going on? Well, I'm glad you asked. This is Plaintiff Scenes from Finland's Yearning. Look at these miserable young 20-somethings. This is a great album, and I don't know, weirdly enough, I kind of do put it on fairly regularly. It's a weird album for Yearning because the rest of their material is a lot more quasi-funeral doom, skepticism-y, Thurgathon-y kind of. But this is kind of their avant-garde, operatic, classical kind of outing. And I picked it up originally at Milwaukee Metal Fest 2001 because it said for fans of Arcturus, and that was a band in my early 20s that really did it for me. I liked a lot of that kind of symphonic avant-garde kind of stuff. And when I was picking out records, it just caught my eye, and I thought, you know what? That's our thing. One of the things I do really love about this album is the drumming and the production overall, particularly the drum sound. It's awesome. It's perfect. The drummer is super tight. These guys were from Finland, and I'm trying to read this difficult font. By this way, this came out in 1998. I'm trying to figure out if this was recorded in Tico Tico or not. Tico Tico was one of my favorite, just real nice, clean, beautiful kind of sound studios. I'm not finding that information, but you can look it up yourself. Links down below, of course. So, we're getting into the end of the F's. Still got a long ways to go. So, yeah, we got quite a pile here, but kind of some redundancies. But this is a good stack, honestly. First, we've got Flames of Hell with Fire and Steel. Now, I wasn't aware of anything about this band when it was first given to me, actually. This is a bootleg of an album which came out originally, and I want to say like 85 or so. And I swear, like, nobody had heard of this when this was bootleg, reissued or so. Maybe 10 or 12 years ago. And I'm pretty sure it was bootlegged by dude from Full Moon Productions, because that was the only place you could get it from back when this came out. But so it was pitched to me, as I guess everybody else, as a lost Icelandic black metal classic from the early days. So people jumped on all over it for cult points and whatnot, but I don't know. I got a copy of it, and I never listened to it really, but I did put it on, I don't know, 2 or 3 months ago or so, and it's not fucking black metal at all. I don't know, it just kind of sounds like early 80s heavy metal. It's just underproduced. It sounds like garbage. I don't think it's that great. It definitely isn't at least living up to, I think, what it was saying it was. So I think it was just like this perfect moment of hype. I imagine he blasted through 1,000 copies of this bootleg, and everybody heard it and was like, whatever. But yeah, Flames of Hell, Fire and Steel, not so great. I want to say I remember it sounding quite a bit like a more boring Venom. So, Pat, you might be into that, I don't know. But on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, this band is not boring whatsoever. Look at that, Flesh Parade, Kill Whitey. This is a compendium of Flesh Parade's Kill Whitey 7-inch, which I also have a copy of. Their 93 and 94 demo titled Worthless and Good Stuff. Flesh Parade were a grind band from New Orleans, I believe. Maybe Baton Rouge. I get the two confused quite a bit from, or whatnot. They were just kind of a silly grind band, and Relapse did this reissue. I think they also did the 7-inch too, but yeah, they were just kind of silly. They were fun. Todd Capitan plays drums on this, and I'm a pretty big fan of his drumming. The 1-foot blasts on this thing are mighty. There's some really, really killer tracks on here. Bite On and Get It. Bite and Get In It. Yeah, Worthless. There's 12 tracks on here, but their songs, yeah, they're over pretty quick. But this is a blasting rager. I really wish these guys would have gone on to maybe do a longer full length or something, but they're kind of one of those bands like Hemdale. They had their kind of moment in the spotlight, I guess, where they're just kind of were churning out 7-inches and EPs and whatnot, and the steam kind of really never got anywhere. Hemdale had Rad Jackson, which was that super awesome compilation of all their stuff, but we're kind of left with just this. They did reform, I want to say maybe 10 years ago or so, and I was super amped to hear what they would wind up doing, but I got so sick of waiting for them to finish their full length. I don't know if I ever got around to listening to it. And also I think their vocalist was with them at first when they reformed, but then he left. So that was a big part of what I liked about Flesh Parade. Their vocalist was insane. I think he played maybe a show or two. I used to be on the Relapse forums with the guitar player from that band. But next we've got Flesh Crawl, one of my favorite death metal bands. Descend into the Absurd, 93. This is just a killer classic death metal record. I found this in a used CD shop for about $6 or $7 many umpteen years ago. Yeah, came out on Black Mark. Super well recorded. It's just your prototypical, perfectly written Swedish death metal. A little less melodic, I suppose, than your ilk of that sort, but it is killer. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with it. This is a pretty rare item, and I'm glad I have it, because if I didn't have it, I would probably be pretty hard up pining for a copy of it. Also have their next record, Impurity. Fucking killer album. If you follow my channel pretty closely, you remember the story of when I bought a copy of this. Well, my friends had a copy of this way back in the day when it first came out, and I really liked it. I just kind of never got around to getting a copy of it. So then about 2 years ago or so, I was like, I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna go ahead and get it. I think I got like a bonus at work or something, and I was like, I'm gonna go ahead and pony up and get myself a present. So I spent like $25 on a copy of this thing. I got it, and I put it in, and Pet Shop Boys played on the copy of it. So I wrote back to the label that I bought it from. It was like their used rarities section or whatever. And I shot a video of me like grabbing the disc, putting it in the player, hitting play, and Pet Shop Boys. I sent him a video, and he was like, all right, send it back to me. And he had another copy of it that he sent to me instead. So I lucked out really, really hard there. Anyways, this record kills. This is where it's at for me with Flesh Crawl. It was recorded by Dan Svanja, and I think this is one of the most perfectly recorded death metal records there ever was. It's actually a departure from Descend into the Absurd a bit style-wise. There's a lot of just like really stupid kind of slidey grind riffs. It's really simplified and dumbed down. I would say kind of like the progression that Seance did from For Never Laid to Rest to Salt Rub Dies. That kind of got a little bit more like accessible, chunky, rock and roll, I guess. You know what I mean. It's just a little bit more palatable and easy to digest style-wise, but it's killer. I love to turn this thing up to 100 in my car and just blast it. The next one is Blood Soul, also on Black Mark BMCD 88. Picked this up a couple months ago from Kevin, used. Super glad I did. He also sold me Blood Red Massacre. So I haven't had these for very long, so I haven't had a chance to get too familiar with them. But the downfall of these two is that they were recorded by a certain young man whose recording jobs I kind of am not a huge fan of. They sound too slick. They're a little too high-end for me. It just kind of takes me out of the groove. But style-wise, these are, I guess, more of a logical progression from the debut, Descendants of the Absurd. And they would really stay on this track and keep on putting out pretty good albums. Made of Flesh on Metal Blade Records. So this brings us to 2004. And then we have, actually this is before that one. This is As Blood Rains from the Sky, We Walk the Path of Endless Fire. They've got like all pretty short album titles, and then this one is just a really long one. I picked this up most recently of all the Flesh Crawl albums, and I've played it a couple of times. I really don't remember. I couldn't say from memory what the difference really would be between these two, but I need to get one more Flesh Crawl album, that being said, funny enough. There's one more to complete my Flesh Crawl collection. And I kind of feel like in the back of my head I'm kind of holding out before I get that one to really like dive into their discography and just kind of like listen to one for a week and the next one for a week and the next one for a week and just kind of like really study their discography. They are still playing shows. I don't know if they're planning on recording anymore or whatnot, but they've always kind of been a band where you can't really rely on them to put something out every year. It's been like every 4 or 5 years or so. Anyways, yeah. Next we've got a band that, gosh, I wish more people knew about these guys. Fleshtized, Here Among Thorns. These guys were from Huntsville, Alabama, and I don't know, there's really no way around it. They sound a shitload like Morbid Angel. In fact, the last track on here is a cover of Rapture. Style-wise, I guess you could also compare this to like the Hate Eternal debut, which I really liked, and I don't like the rest of their stuff. But God, this artwork is just so terrible. You've got 2 panels of 8 panels, and here's what you do with it. What in the hell are you thinking? I know this came out a good, I don't know, 13 years ago probably or so on Forever Underground, but what, they really shit the bed. I think the band name is it's pretty fucking cheesy, and the artwork on it is pretty awful, but it's a killer record. I highly recommend giving this a listen. If you're at all a fan of Morbid Angel, it's really good. Poor man's Morbid Angel, which is not a bad thing in my opinion. Next, that brings us to Fluidity, Min tid skal komme, My Times Shall Come, Norway's Super Duper Weirdos. Again, with the god-awful, horrendous packaging. This is a candlelight reissue of their infamous full-length from '93, I want to say. And there's a Darker Shade of Evil demo on here. No, yeah, I think that's what that is. There's a demo on the end of it, and then there's a track that was exclusive to a compilation, which comes after the album and before the demo. Their demo was pretty infamous back in '91 or '92 for having some of the most shrill and just insane vocals that had ever been heard at that time. That was like '92 or so. And as the lore goes, there is no effects put on those vocals. You know, I'm unfolding this to show you the artwork, but I know it's just going to be fucking boring. Buh! Chicken wire and eyeballs. Boogity googity. The album is really amazing. I wish I wouldn't have taken so long to get a copy of this, but the original is really hard to find. It was just recently reissued on vinyl, I think last year, maybe by Peaceville. They've been doing a killer job of reissuing a lot of old-timey stuff from Europe, and it's good. But those vocals on those early demos, it's just something you gotta hear. It sounds like an eagle, honestly, singing in a black metal band. And they were probably fucking 14 or 15 when they did that. But Mintage Kokama is a really, really important release for avant-garde and strange kind of black metal. At surface value, you'd probably hear it and think, well, it sounds kind of like Ulver, and yeah, but like Ulver and maybe Vedboen Zen comparisons aren't too far off. But if you really, really listen to it and give it your full attention, it is a bizarre and fascinating release. It's pretty timeless. So I wish I had a better version of it than this, but that's what I got. You should probably be able to pick this up on Discogs for $3 or $4, and it's worth it. So that was like 94 that album came out, and let me make sure I get my chronology right here. I think the next thing they did then was this Last Minute Lies EP. I will fault them for this artwork. This is not a reissue, and this artwork is deplorable and embarrassing. But again, this is the stuff kind of around the turn of the century where stuff was getting all futuristic and techno, scary, boogity boogie kind of stuff. But this is a fun EP. I actually like this a little bit more than the full length that we're going to talk about in a second. It's just kind of short. It's kind of got one foot planted in the past, where it's kind of weird, strange, avant-garde, and dissonant. But I think these songs are really catchy and original, and memorable, honestly. When I put this back in, I think there's only 3 tracks on this. Supernal Records put this out. Fucking Cartagic. And this is the full-length Department of Apocalyptic Affairs. So this one came out not long after the EP, but this packaging is also bizarre. It's got kind of alternating covers that you can choose, and I've never seen anything like this. So you pull that out, and then you've got 2 more choose your own album covers, and then you've got like this makeshift little manila folder with some scribbles on it, and then each song has their own little page or file or whatever. And then imagine this, they're sitting on the toilet. Can you believe that? Jesus, they are just breaking all the rules. But so they're trying to make it look like there's some kind of Secret Service lyricists or whatever. I don't know. It's kind of interesting, I guess. This album has a lot of guest appearances on it. Let's see if we can see. I know Carl Michael Ide plays drums on one of these tracks. I think Maniac, who I was never impressed by his vocals, really. A couple others, you'll have to look it up yourself, I suppose, to get the real dirt on it. But it's just one of those weird turn of the century kind of industrial kind of tech, I don't know, more electronic, I guess, kind of albums. Unless you're, I would say if you're not already a fan of Fluidity, definitely don't start here. But I don't think you're gonna like this unless you already know about Fluidity. They're just kind of, I'm one of those guys, and I've got a couple of friends that are kind of just die-hard deep divers for the Norway stuff and anything in that circle of like Vedboen Zen and Ora Noir and Ulver and Fluidity and those kind of weirdos. Totem Scarred, for that matter. I buy any of that stuff up. So then I talked about this briefly a couple of videos ago when I got it. This is In Quietum. So the weird thing that they did after this Department of Apocalyptic Affairs came out, I think they were on hiatus for a little while, but then they started to release 7 inches over and over and over again. It was like every year for like 7 or 8 years they put out a different 7-inch, and I was like, okay, you're active again, but I do not want to enjoy you 2 songs a year. So I just kind of sat them out. I was like, I basically considered them not active anymore. Cool thing though is that this label, Aesthetic Death, put out all the 7 inches on CD. So sit around your duff long enough and you are rewarded with a fine compendium of Fluidity stuff. I wouldn't say this necessarily plays like an album. It does kind of play like a compilation of 7 inches, which it is. So it's a little hard to enjoy in a linear front to back kind of fashion, but there are some really, really killer tracks on here that are a little bit more traditional than I'm used to hearing Fluidity play, especially for the time period that these were released and recorded and written in. I don't know, I suppose I could look it up and find out. I don't know if they like wrote and recorded them all and then just like blasted them out on 7 inches and then the CD, or if they're just like wrote 2 songs, released them, wrote 2 more and released them. And that being said, you know, that's not evident when listening to this album, so it doesn't sound like the last songs are different than the first ones necessarily. I'm not too sure. This came out probably 3 or 4 years ago, if I'm right, and I just got it a few months ago, so I'm not super familiar with it, but I wasn't expecting to like it as much as I actually did. So check that out. So then they did a new album, finally, The White Death. And Peaceville Records put this out last year. So my hot take on this is it's got some really amazing experimental parts to it. It's super avant-garde. I wouldn't want to have them doing anything else. They reach for the boundaries and as far as they can and get as weird as they feel like being. There's no constraints being shown on this. However, some of the moments on it are not good. I just can't. Some parts are just like, okay, I'm putting up with this one because the rest of it is good enough. So it's not like the album is all samey and it's okay. There's some amazing, great parts on it, and then there's some fucking stinkers on it. So that's my take on The White Death by Fluidity. I don't love it, but I do have like a really soft spot for this band. But last, God, this is one of the stupidest band names I have ever heard. It's just kind of one of those band names that you take for granted because you've been hearing it since the 80s, but when you really, really think about it, Flotsam and Jetsam. When the Storm Comes Down. I don't know, my good buddy is a super fan of these guys, swears by all their albums, but this is really the only one that has kind of ever clicked with me. I know there are some people who are super huge fans of their first few. One of them I used to have on LP, another one I used to have on cassette. I wound up getting rid of them. They just didn't click with me. But this one is really, really fun. I love the range on the singer's vocals. I don't think I've ever heard another 80s singer who can just shrill all the way up to oblivion. This is weird and distracting, huh? And it's great. It's tons of fun sing-along riffs and vocals and shit. It's a good album. I recently heard... Okay, I'm glad that's over with. It's a killer record, but it's really distracting in the back of a video. Radical Research just did a episode talking about albums ruined by their production. And When the Storm came up, and I just felt like defending it super hard. I don't mind it. I know it sounds kind of weird. It's kind of snare drum up front, vocals up front, and kind of everything else has got a lot of distance between it. It's weird, but I wouldn't say it ruins the record by any means, and I don't really I've never really necessarily thought, wow, this has terrible production or whatsoever. But that's it from the vault in the bag. Let's get back into it. We'll see you next time. Thank you for your time.